Hey guys, how's it going? Toofty here, and today we're looking at something a little bit different. We're going to be looking at a video that Cosmic Afro put out. Great YouTuber. I'm hoping you won't mind me doing this. I'm actually going to be looking at some of the data he pulled together. So in his video, he goes through the results of a survey he did. He got over 7,000 entries, which I thought was amazing. I don't know how he got all those. But yeah, the survey just had some generic questions around TF2, and it breaks it down into all the different classes. So what I wanted to do was take a look at Demoman. And as you can see, if you go into his description, and if you really want to, you can look at all the different results he got, and I'm going to take a look at just the Demoman ones, and yeah, just basically talk about my thoughts and what I think the data means. So yeah, check it out if you haven't already. If you want some context to this video, you might want to watch this one first. Okay, so the first question is, how many hours have you played as Demoman? Not much to talk about here, but the one thing I wanted to mention was, bear in mind that not everyone who answered these questions was a demo main. For some of the more nuanced questions, they may not be as familiar as someone who does main him and has hundreds of hours on him. But anyway, yes, let's move on from this question. Not much to get from that one. Where do you play most? Obviously, casual servers are the most popular ones. Surprisingly, it looks like a quarter of players play on community servers. I pretty much spend most of my time in casual servers, so it's interesting to see that. And obviously, a tiny little slither for the competitive side of things. Okay, so this is where it gets more interesting, and this is what I really wanted to focus on. Which is your favourite primary weapon? So genuinely recently I was wondering what would be more popular, the grenade launcher or the iron bomber. I knew they were close, and this answers that exact question, which is great. That's why I love this data. It looks like the grenade launcher is still the most popular weapon, or primary weapon, sorry, with the iron bomber being a close second. I knew it would be close. I was wondering if maybe the iron bomber had overtaken the stock grenade launcher, but it looks like it hasn't, which is really interesting because when you're on forums or looking at YouTube comments, there are a lot of strong, opinionated people who really enjoy the iron bomber, but you don't hear many people kind of defending the grenade launcher, saying the grenade launcher is awesome. I think it's just because it's, you know, it's stock. People just tend to not get as passionate about it. So yeah, just for me, this was great to see. Cleared up some things in my mind. The loose cannon was the next one, the green chunk here. Quite a lot of people using that. I definitely need to get that out more often, do some videos on it. And then we've got the boots and the lock and load, and then the base jumper. Obviously, not many people use that at all. So, what's your favourite secondary weapon? The sticky bomb launcher gets a lot of abuse, a lot of slack. I personally love it. For me, it's the most efficient way to get out damage as a Demoman. I won't go too much into that in this video, but it's really interesting to see that out of these 7,000 people, almost half favour it as their, as their top secondary weapon. So it is being used by a lot of people. This tells us that basically the stock loadout is still the most popular, which I just thought was interesting. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just really interesting to see because, like I said, you don't hear it getting talked about as much as some of the other, secondary loadouts. So the Tide Turner is the most popular shield, the second most popular weapon. But it's pretty close, to be fair. The Splendid Screen, the Charge and Targe, they're all pretty even. And those would make up basically over a quarter of this. So it looks like maybe a third of the demo's player base is Demonite. Again, very interesting. What are the last bits we've got? The Sticky Jumper, the green one here. Scottish Resistance here, to be honest, more than I expected. And the Quickie Bomb Launcher, probably less than I expected. Okay, let's scroll down. Let's take a look at the next question. What is your favourite melee weapon? Now mine would be the frying pan, so I guess that would mean, the bottle, which is just about the top chunk here. A clear second is the Eyelander. Yeah, you do see this guy getting used a lot. I didn't realise it was used quite that much, almost a third. Earlier we found out that a third of demos are Demo Knights, so it kind of makes sense actually that there's a good chunk using a weapon like this. Next up is the Skull Cutter. This one I actually really like, and if I was going to choose something other than the frying pan, it would definitely be this one, I think. So what else have we got? The Half Zatoichi. I'm probably butchering that, but that's quite popular as well. Surprisingly, quite a lot of people using the Caber, and the least favourites are the Persian Persuader and the Pain Train. Okay, so which weapons do you believe are overpowered for the Demoman? I don't think there are many overpowered weapons for the Demoman. Maybe I'm biased, but let's take a look at what people think. Well, a lot of people have said none, but that being said, a lot of people have voted for the Skull Cutter. Any other big ones? The Sticky Bomb Launcher's high-ish, and the Quickie Bomb Launcher is high-ish. Surprisingly, the Lock and Load, that's surprising because so few people are using it. I mean, I don't even think 13% were using it. Again, this is another weapon I really want to try out a lot more, but every time I get it out, the faster projectile speed really throws me off. Anyway, same question again, but this time which weapons do you believe need a buff? This time the none of the above box was ticked a lot less. The two that jump out to me, firstly the Claydheim Moor. The other one here is the K-bar. Now, I'm inclined to agree with this because it's great fun, but it's definitely just a gimmick at the moment. I mean, I definitely think they could do something to this to nudge it ever so slightly more towards being an actual viable weapon. So I think I agree with that one. Okay, so I think this next graph is meant to be which weapons do you think are never used for the Demoman? I'm not sure, but it kind of makes sense because the Pain Train has loads of votes, and that is, to be fair, very rarely used, I think. As we see, the Lock and Load, yeah, not too many people use that. Base Jumper, Scottish Resistance, Quickie Bomb Launcher. So, I think, would have thought a lot of people use that, but I won't spend too long on this just because the title's missing, so I'm not 100% sure what the question is, but I'm pretty sure it's that. So the next question is, do you play Demoman defensively, offensively, or regardless? Now, this is a bit of a weird one. If you're a demo main, you'll probably play him regardless. If not, then you may assume that Demoman is actually a defensive class, but this suggests otherwise. But my gut feeling is people are, answering this in a way like, do you jump around the map and get in the enemy's face, or do you kind of play conservatively and rely on traps? So I think it's more to do with that, in which case, kind of makes sense. It's definitely how I like to play. So I touched upon this at the very beginning of the survey. Do you main Demoman? Obviously, a huge amount don't who are answering this survey, so bear that in mind. The blue and the orangey chunk are those who do main him, and the orangey chunk are those people who wanted to make sure that they were still good at other classes, okay? So it's fine. So yeah, take some of those results with a grain of salt. So this is a really interesting question. Do you believe pure Demo Knight is a valid playstyle? I tell you what, there are some Demo Knights on the edge of their seat now, shaking and fuming with anger at the thought of anyone answering no. Well, the good news to them is that only a slither have said no. A huge amount are kind of doubtful about it. Maybe they are people who haven't really played Demo Knight, but there are almost half of you guys who think yes, without a doubt, it is a valid playstyle. I don't want to go too deep into this question because it will cause riots across the world. I don't play Demo Knight enough to have a very strong opinion on this. My gut feeling is that the classic stock demo loadout is probably one of the most reliable ways to get out constant damage. I'm sure there are some maps where Demo Knight works really well, but like the classic demo, he's almost like a generalist, whereas a Demo Knight gets a bit more specialist, more situational. But anyway, I'm going to slowly step away from this question before I enrage too many people, and we can maybe address that in another video. But yeah, interesting results here. Okay, do you sticky spam? I'm annoyed at this question. Why would you call it sticky spam? It's not spamming if you're doing it with clever things and aiming and stuff. I actually do want to make a video purely about this term here, sticky spam, and actually just about spam in general. It's a really interesting term that's come about, and it's used for such a broad range of things. When a soldier is shooting in front of the enemy to predict where they're going and getting damage out, people don't really call that spam, but if you're a Demoman and you're aiming in front of the enemy to get that damage out, it's exactly the same, but people call it spam. The only time they don't call it spam is when you're using stickies for traps, but that's kind of like the easiest way to get a kill, if you see what I mean. Anyway, it's one of those things you've got to live with as a demo main who uses the sticky bomb launcher a lot. I guess it's like the WM1 pyros. They must get that a lot. Even if you're not that kind of pyro, that must sometimes get annoying. Anyway, do you sticky spam? Do you mean putting traps everywhere like I'm supposed to? So yeah, that's the yes section. I mean, I wouldn't call them traps if you're just predicting as to where they're going to be in the next second and detonating. I don't really consider that a trap. Yes, but I know how to lay a trap if I need one. So yellow's kind of like maybe, and then green is no, that's dumb. This is a really weird question. I think you can interpret this in so many different ways. I guess the people who don't do it at all, they could be either Demo Knights who don't actually use the item, or they could be people who use it literally only for traps, which seems like madness to me. Or even, they could be thirdly, people who see the word spam and think, well, I don't spam. No, I throw them down and immediately detonate to get damage out, but I don't spam. So it really could be like loads of different things. So yeah, I'm almost inclined just to ignore this question for now. But yeah, a really interesting topic. How's your sticky jumping abilities? I'm decent, but I know I can't jump everything like other fancy demos. There are quite a few people who say I'm not very good at sticky jumping. Maybe, I guess I can do the basic jump. Again, these are quite funny, answers, but at the same time, it's difficult to tell exactly what they mean because you can kind of interpret them differently. I'm guessing blue means you can pogo and do all sorts of crazy cool stuff, but my gut feeling is not that many people can do those jumps. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Majority of people can jump to some degree. Okay, so earlier I mentioned how you should probably take this with a grain of salt. This is kind of one of those questions where the salt rations need to be increased, shall we say. How accurate are you with direct hit pills? Everyone knows hitting a direct hit with a grenade is one of the hardest things to do in TF2. It's up there. 7 out of 10 Really? So every 10 shots, you're hitting 7 directly on target? No, I think not, baby. Let me just check if that's a lie. Yes it is. I don't know exactly how many pipes out of 10 I hit on target, but I'm pretty sure it's less than 7. So basically I find this hilarious. You know, it's anonymous. No one's gonna judge you. I don't know why people have, I just don't know. 10? Who hits 10 out of 10 pills? You'd have to be a god. You couldn't even use an aimbot to get that. It doesn't even make, I don't even know. Anyway, I'm calm. Let's move on. Can you double donk with the loose cannon? Surprisingly, these results are way more realistic. Again, there's still those 4% who getting 10 out of 10 double donks, which is amazing. The majority are around 4. That seems about fair to me. Like, I don't use it enough to be super confident at it. Maybe 3 or 4 seems about right. The next question is, do you spawn camp with your sticky bomb launcher? As I said, this is anonymous, so you'd hope you'd be honest. I think I'd actually go with the majority here. Very rarely, it's unsportsmanly. If you're trying your best, you will spawn camp in certain situations. But I try to avoid it because it's just really annoying, you know? But there's also a good chunk who just do it no matter what, and there's a good chunk who would never dream of doing it. So, kind of interesting. Final few questions now. Are you aware that some sticky launchers can remove enemy stickies? Quite a few people didn't realise that, so obviously the Scottish Resistance and the Quickie Bomb Launcher can both destroy enemy stickies, worth bearing in mind. Do you collect heads while using a shield, then switch to a sticky launcher? I actually didn't know you could do this, so that's just because I don't play Demoman pretty much ever, or very rarely. It's a really interesting technique, I like the idea of that. But yeah, a lot of people weren't aware of this, and even more people are far too honourable to do this. Apparently, anyway. Are you aware you can steal heads from enemy demos, snipers with bizarre bargains, and soldiers with airstrikes? Most people were aware of this. Again, I'll skip over that really because I don't know loads about Demonite. And finally, do you play this class more for dealing with sentries? So yeah, 50% say, you know, they would choose this class perhaps just to take out a sentry gun. So yeah, that's the last question. I thought some of those were really interesting. If you want to learn more and look at some of the other surveys, then yeah, take a look at Cosmic Afro's page. Find this video you can see here, open the description and you've got all the different Google Docs. It's definitely worth reading the one that relates to your main because it's really interesting. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. A bit of a different one, but I did want to go through those questions, chat with you guys about it. If you've got any opinions, thoughts on those, love to hear from you. Let me know if you agree with some of the points I went through. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next video.
The cart is